Agent Orange, a mix of herbicides used throughout the Vietnam War that caused plants to shrivel up and die within hours. This dangerous soup of herbicides held a secret. It carried an awful toxin and carcinogen called TCCD, better known as dioxin. Defoliants and herbicides are specific chemicals designed to target unwanted plants and foliage, to kill them and strip them of their leaves. Herbicides are widely used in farming and food production. In war, herbicides are used as a tactical weapon to destroy food sources and defensive plant coverage. After the First World War, chemical warfare took on hundreds of new names and forms. During the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, countries worldwide began developing more poisonous gases, nerve agents such as sarin and tavin, and large amounts of herbicides. Simultaneously, communism began to rapidly spread throughout many Eastern Asian countries, striking war in China, Korea, and Vietnam. During the Vietnam War, millions of gallons of herbicides and Agent Orange were dumped over 20% of South Vietnamese jungle and crops. The irresponsible use of Agent Orange stripped away citizens' rights by causing the health problems, extreme healthcare costs, and death of hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese citizens and veterans, and it placed innumerable responsibilities on the U.S. government and chemical companies to help clean up the aftermath. Crop dusting a country, the irresponsible use of Agent Orange in Vietnam. Chemical warfare is an integral part to the development of Agent Orange. Using chemicals as a tactical weapon in war is what brought Agent Orange into existence. This idea of using chemicals in war is traced back to the ancient Greeks. The Greeks used poisons to taint the water supplies of enemies, and also used sulfur fumes to drive people out of the city of Platae. Throughout history, chemicals have been used as weapons to kill people or remove them from locations. In 1845, French soldiers smoked out and killed an Algerian tribe after they fled into Dara Cave. Chemical warfare has become more common in the last century. From 1914 to 1918, World War I was raging. Both sides of the conflict used chemical weapons, such as phosgene, mustard gas, and chlorine gas. These gases took massive tolls on the soldiers who fought in the war and killed upwards of 90,000 personnel. After the use of chemical weapons in World War I, the Geneva Protocol was instated in 1925. This protocol banned the use of all asphyxiating gases and other biological weapons. This protocol would later become linked to the debate over the use of Agent Orange. The next main use of chemical weapons is during World War II, in German concentration camps in the Pacific Theater. Nazis discovered nerve agents such as sarin and tavin, and were then made by prisoners in concentration camps. The gas Zyklon B was also used, where prisoners were killed in gas chambers by the poisonous gas. In 1945, the United States dropped thousands of firebombs on Japanese cities, filled with napalm, a sticky, gelled gasoline. This was one of the deadliest bombing raids of World War II, killing over 100,000 people and destroying over 90% of some cities. During World War II, the British and US developed herbicides and planned to use them in the war, but never had the opportunity. Amongst those herbicides were 2,4-dichlorophenoxyacetic acid, or 2,4-D, and 2,4,5-trichlorophenoxyacetic acid, also known as 2,4,5-T. These two herbicides are what make up Agent Orange. As communism grew around the world in the 1950s, the Korean War started and a new act was passed. This act, the Defense Production Act of 1950, stated that the U.S. government could hire companies to make weapons during a time of war. This act is what gave the U.S. government permission to hire companies such as Dow and Monsanto to make Agent Orange. The 1950s also saw conflict in Malaysia, known as the Malayan Emergency. The British used an herbicide very similar to Agent Orange, which was designed to taint water and food supplies, and to stop ambushes. These herbicides were successful and helped the British win one of the first counter-communism revolts during the Cold War. These herbicides also largely inspired Operation Ranch Hand, the operation where 20 million gallons of herbicides and Agent Orange were dumped over a 9-year time span. In 1961, the United States realized that they had a problem. The Viet Cong was using the dense jungle and crops to their advantage. The young soldiers who were fighting in the war were not trained and used to the jungle environment. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, came up with many different options for a solution, including using Agent Orange, which had been discovered during the 1940s. At the same time, the president of South Vietnam, Ngo Dinh Diem, asked the United States to perform an aerial spray of herbicides over his country. Small experimental spraying began in August of 1961. Before herbicides could be completely used in the war, an executive order needed to pass. After careful debate and consideration by the U.S. government, in November of 1961, U.S. President John F. Kennedy approved the use of herbicides. In 1962, the experimentation ended and strict aerial spraying of herbicides began. These regulations became more relaxed, and from 1962 to 1971, the spraying became more frequent. And thus, Operation Ranch Hand began. Operation Ranch Hand was heavily based off of the use of herbicides during the Malaysian emergency. Operation Ranch Hand also had an unofficial motto, based off of Smokey the Bear. It reads, "Only you can prevent a forest." Agent Orange is an herbicide that is part of a group of chemicals called the rainbow herbicides. These herbicides contain Agent Orange, Agent White, Agent Pink, Agent Purple, Agent Green, and Agent Blue. Agents White and Agents Orange were used the most and were designed to defoliate jungle, while herbicides such as Agent Blue were used to defoliate rice and other crops. Agent Orange was used most extensively and was used the longest. Agent Orange is a mix of two herbicides, 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. Sadly, when mixed, it forms one of the most dangerous toxins in the world, 2,3,7,8 tetrachlorodibenzoyl-P-dioxin, commonly known as dioxin. Agent Orange was sprayed over 5 million acres and 20% of South Vietnamese mangrove forest and jungle. The operation was very risky, as the pilots who were in charge of flying the adapted C-123s flew at very low altitudes, which could be easily shot down. When C-123s couldn't be used, specially configured helicopters were used to spray the herbicides. The chemical toxin in Agent Orange, dioxin, devastatingly is linked to the death of millions of veterans and Vietnamese citizens. In 1971, the U.S. government stopped the use of Agent Orange after experimentation with mice showed birth defects. The AAAS ordered all herbicides with 2,4,5-T to be removed immediately, meaning Agent Orange and multiple rainbow herbicides. On January 7, 1971, the last mission of Operation Ranch Hand was flown, and the herbicide program was over. The United States military also told the soldiers that Agent Orange was harmless and that it was completely safe.
Well, they just said it was a defoliant. And up at that point, they were denying that it had any detrimental effect on people.
Interesting. Agent Orange was swiftly taken out of Vietnam, and some was burned out at sea, but most was taken to Johnston Atoll and was held there for years, until it was incinerated with deposits of sarin gas. Agent Orange caused immense damage to the environment. Agent Orange worked very fast and could defoliate dense jungle in hours. Agent Orange was sprayed in quantities 13 to 55% more than designed. Not only was the jungle sprayed, but farmland and rice paddies. The defoliated trees and crops also posed problems. The dried leaves could easily catch fire during dry seasons. The overuse of Agent Orange is still felt today, where property and farmland is unusable. Sadly, the environment wasn't the only thing Agent Orange destroyed. Dioxin is a destructive and toxic poison that causes all sorts of cancers, diseases, and deformities to the human body. An estimated 170 kilograms of dioxin was dumped in Vietnam. In perspective, courtesy of The Guardian, if 80 grams of dioxin were dropped into the water supply of New York City, it would kill the population. In Vietnam, around 4 million people were affected by Agent Orange, and an estimated 3 million people are still affected today, and that number is increasing. Agent Orange in Vietnam caused millions of children to be born with birth defects. Consequently, 13 hospitals have been set up called Peace Villages for those children who have been orphaned and plagued with deformities. These hospitals also have high prices, with most families unable to pay the cost. Meanwhile, in the United States, Agent Orange was affecting veterans who served in Vietnam. Soon after the war, roughly 2.8 million soldiers who contacted Agent Orange started to develop cancers and diseases that were passed down to generations.
Well, besides myself, I think most combat veterans in Vietnam have probably experienced some detrimental effects from Agent Orange.
On May 7, 1984, after a class action lawsuit, 7 of the 9 chemical companies who produced Agent Orange gave out $180 million in compensation funds to the veterans who filed in. This, and along with the Veterans Affairs funds, lasted only until 1997, when they ended. Most recently in Duck Valley Reservation, traces of Agent Orange have been found in the soil. This caused cancers and diseases to spread throughout the area. Agent Orange took a massive toll on the world. It ruined the lives of those who were exposed to it and the lives of others to come. Agent Orange scarred Vietnam and caused millions of people to develop many grotesque health problems. The use of Agent Orange also caused thousands of veterans to lose the trust in the government they once served. In conclusion, what seemed like a brilliant idea turned out to be a catastrophe. It stripped away rights and placed responsibilities on governments for time to come. Agent Orange will forever leave its trace in history.